All right, hello everybody. It's Dan Barrett here from AdWords Nerds, and I'm calling this training How to Survive Lean Times and Profit While Other Investors Go Under. And in a lot of ways, I think this is the most important training I've ever done. I certainly think it's the most serious, and I'm going to get straight into it. Okay, we are in the middle of very, very tough times for the investing market. Things, I don't think, definitely since I've been in this space, things have not been this hard and this tough. And I'm going to guess that if you are an investor and you've been watching this and you've been doing this for pretty much any amount of time, you are going to immediately know what I am talking about. All right. And I was thinking about this problem and I actually found this formula that describes exactly what is happening in the investing marketplace right now. Literally, this formula explains this to a T. And I'm going to explain this. I'm going to break it down. If you don't know how to do math, well, neither do I. But I'm going to break down what this means for you in a little bit. First, I want to give you some numbers in order to put some context around it. This is a chart of Facebook's advertising revenue from 2009 to 2017 in millions of US dollars. Okay, and we can see a very clear trajectory here, right? You do not have to be a math genius to see what is happening here. Facebook is getting tons of new advertisers every single month, every single week, every single day. All right. In the fourth quarter of 2017, Facebook's advertising revenue increased by 48% year over year to 12.8 billion. Okay. Now, to put that in perspective, Facebook as an entire company made 13 billion. So where does Facebook make their money? From advertising. And what is happening in the Facebook advertising space? An explosive amount of year over year growth. But it's not just Facebook. Here's Google's advertising revenue. I think a lot of people like to sleep on Google. They like to sleep on AdWords because Facebook's kind of like the new hot thing. This is Google's advertising revenue from 2001 to 2017 in billions of US dollars. Note that the Facebook one I showed you was millions. This one is billions. And do you see the growth trajectory here? It is massive. Google's advertising revenue grew 25% in 2017. Paid clicks rose 438% in 2017. So this is not just in Facebook, and it is not this kind of like slow, gradual growth. It is not the case that the online marketing channels have maxed out. There is massive amounts of growth. Now, everywhere you look, investors are flooding these online channels. Okay? Everywhere you look, every single market, every single state, large and small, investors with big budgets, investors with small budgets, investors are flooding the online channels. And that's with good reason, right? That is with very good reasoning. Well, why? Then why are so many investors flooding online? What is happening? What is the root causes? There's a couple different ones. For one, we're in a really aggressive seller's market. I can almost guarantee that you've noticed this if you've been paying any attention at all. It is a seller's market. There's an incredible amount of competition for the houses that are on the market. Houses that are on the market in most regional markets are going very, very quickly. And that puts a lot of pressure on investors. If as an investor you go to try to put a deal under contract and that person knows they can sell on the MLS in a week, that takes away one of your primary levers as an investor to get that deal, which is speed, right? I am sure you have noticed this. Second thing is that there is a huge influx of new and inexperienced investors. You have probably noticed that there are people coming in from coaching programs, people coming in from seminars, people coming in from just all sorts of programs that are training new investors. And this is happening all over the country. There's a huge influx. In fact, the REI coaching market is absolutely booming. And that's awesome, right? That's awesome. But it does mean that there is a huge influx of newbies into the market. And I can almost guarantee that you've seen a huge influx of newbies into your market. And if you haven't, you're gonna. All right. So what ends up happening is that when you get a crowded market like this, right, you combine the seller's market with a bunch of new investors, the old channels like direct mail and bandit signs become less effective because those coaching programs primarily teach the old channels. Like if you go to a seminar to learn how to be an investor, what do they give you? They give you a postcard. They give you a yellow letter. They give you a bandit sign. And so those old channels become less effective over time. Now, as old channels get crowded, experienced investors are forced to move online. Because if you're an investor that's been around for a while, you've got a budget, you're doing deals, your leads start to dry up if you depend exclusively on the old channels. And your business, you got people to pay, you got a team, you got a family to feed, right? So what happens when the old channels dry up? You start to look for new channels, and for almost everybody, that means online. Remember those charts of the growth of the online ad channels. People are moving online. But there's a problem, okay? And the problem is that there is not enough to go around. I'm going to explain what I mean by that. But I want you to let that sit for a second, because it's easy to think that things happen online. It's like kind of infinite. There's a million bajillion people. That is not the case. It is not the case that magically because you go online, your market increases in size. There is not enough to go around. What do I mean by that? I'm going to bring this back to that formula that I brought up at the beginning. Remember, I said this formula perfectly describes what's happening in the investing marketplace right now. So what does this formula actually describe? Well, it's got nothing to do with the housing market. It actually has nothing to do with real estate investing. What this market describes is the food chain. What happens in the food chain? Well, there are things at the bottom of the food chain that tend to be plants. So in this diagram, right, we got carrots, we got grasses, we got grains. There are animals and insects that eat those things at the bottom of the food chain. In this case, it's rabbits, it's mice, and there's grasshoppers. So those three, the rabbits, the mice, the grasshoppers, eat the carrots and the grasses and the grains. Makes sense, right? And then you've got animals on the top of the food chain that eat the things in the middle of the food chain. So you've got foxes and owls and birds that eat the rabbits and the mice and the grasshoppers that eat the carrots and the grasses and the grains. And in a healthy ecosystem, these things exist in balance. There are enough carrots to feed the rabbits, and there are enough rabbits to feed the foxes. There's enough grains to feed the grasshoppers, and there's enough grasshoppers to feed the owls. All right? When everything's in balance, everything works. The system works, the pieces coexist. But what happens when that doesn't stay in balance? Well, you get a wave, all right? Imagine, let's look at this blue line here, okay? The blue line represents the prey animals. This would be like the grasshoppers or the rabbits from the diagram that I just showed you. Now, when that line goes up, meaning that the population of the rabbits, of the grasshoppers, whatever, goes up, there are more of those prey animals. What starts to happen? Well, the population of predators goes up. Hey, there's more rabbits. All of a sudden, the foxes have a lot to eat. And when foxes have a lot to eat, they have a lot of little baby foxes. Make sense so far? A lot of rabbits. There's a lot to eat for the foxes. The foxes have more baby foxes. All well and good. But as the number of foxes goes up, the number of rabbits starts to go down. The more baby foxes that we have, the more foxes there are, which means the more mouths we have to feed. So the more of the foxes, the more they eat the rabbits. Well, the more they eat the rabbits, the less rabbits there are. And the number of rabbits starts to go down. Makes sense, right? You get more rabbits, you get more foxes. You get more foxes, you start to have less rabbits. Cool. Now, as the population of rabbits starts to go down, you get this point in this diagram right here, where you have a high population of foxes and a low population of rabbits. And that is what I call lean times. If you are a fox, this is the absolute worst time to be around because there are a lot of foxes competing for a low number of rabbits. And hey, what ends up happening when there are a lot of foxes and a low number of rabbits? The population of foxes starts to go down. And we call this a starvation wave. And that's what that formula describes. If there are a lot of prey animals, you get an explosion of predator animals. The predator animals drive down the number of prey animals and cause a starvation wave. So what happens when predators outgrow the food supply? They starve. This is what happens in every ecosystem, and it's what is happening right now in real estate investing. So what does this mean for you? All right. First of all, there are a lot of investors going online. Okay, we talked about this, right? Whole lot more competition. That means that the old channels don't work. That means that investors go online in increasing numbers. That means that if you go online right now, there is way more competition for motivated seller leads than even 1 year ago, right? Just way more investors competing. Like I remember when I started this agency like 5 years ago, almost nobody was doing AdWords. Do you believe that? Like almost nobody was doing online ads and it was relatively easy picking. So that is not the case right now. There's way more competition than even 1 year ago. More competition means a higher cost per lead. If you're going on AdWords, you're going on Facebook, you're competing against more investors. That means that you have to pay more for every single lead that you get. But at the same time, there's more investors in your market. Remember those coaching programs, the seminars are pushing newbie investors into pretty much every market. That means that you have more competition for the deals that you're doing, which means you have a lower profit per deal. So you're not only paying more for your leads, you're getting less out the back end when you actually close a deal. More competition plus higher costs equals lean times. Very few investors will survive this shift. Remember that chart. Remember that wave. What happens when the population of rabbits starts to decrease, but there are a lot of foxes? Well, guess what? Most of the foxes don't make it. And just like in the natural world, if you are in an environment where there's a lot of competition for a shrinking number of leads, very few investors are going to survive that environment. It is just a cold, hard fact. Now, that's the problem. How do you get around it? If we are in a situation right now, and I think we are, where the population of investors is vastly outstripping the population of motivated sellers, how can you survive that shift? I'm going to do a series of videos and I'm literally going to break down exactly what you need to do. I'm going to post these online, but if you want to get emailed them right when they come out so you can see them first, go to adwordsnerds.com/unfair. adwordsnerds.com/unfair. And my goal for the next couple videos, will probably be 3 videos or maybe 4. My goal for these videos is I'm going to give you the blueprint so that you can get an unfair advantage in your marketplace and be one of the investors that survives lean times. Let me know what you think.